Hello everyone, welcome to another What I Would Have Done Thursday. I'm sorry that these videos are getting delayed. Unfortunately, I've been having some issues uploading YouTube videos. I was able to upload the music talk as well as the book review today. For some reason, it was taking forever for YouTube to upload the video. So, I've had to unfortunately delay making videos until finally it started working. So hopefully there's no issues for now. But without further ado, let me address what I want to talk about for this What I Would Have Done Thursday. And as you can see, excuse me, by the title, as well as probably the thumbnail, we're going to be discussing, From Justin to Kelly, which was one of the more, I think, famous, really bad movies that came out over the years. It's on various lists of being probably up there with the most well-recognized bad films. IMDb in particular has it up there. And I think this is for good reason, because there is a lot of problems that exist within this film, and a lot of it I think was designed to sort of be a kind of cash grab. But at the same time, I think, there is still a lot of things that it could have done to improve upon itself, and that's what I thought I would discuss today. So, basically, in case nobody has any familiarity as to why this film was made, well, back in the early 2000s in particular, there was a very popular show out. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called American Idol. And it's largely the show that kind of got the ball rolling for all these other different kinds of shows that feature various people like from the street who eventually become sort of superstars. I think now we have shows like The Voice and America's Got Talent, Dancing with the Stars as well. I mean, I think a lot of it did start with this concept that American Idol really did introduce to the mainstream, which was taking the people that wanted to be famous and giving them their 5 seconds or however long to show whether or not they had any potential. And I think largely the show was, at least for me, I think I personally didn't like watching American Idol throughout a lot of the times that I've attempted to watching it, because I remember it being a very successful hit, and a lot of people were saying, oh, you need to watch American Idol. And after seeing a couple of episodes, I will say the only entertaining parts are when you're watching the people who think that they have some creative credibility, who come up and you just totally see that they don't, and it just kind of makes me laugh. It's the only entertaining part of the entire show, unfortunately, and everything else is just kind of, you feel like a lot of what they're doing is designed to be very, kind of manufactured, and it doesn't feel like a very genuine show for the most part. So that was really the only satisfaction that I really got from American Idol, was just seeing the people who think they had some credibility and just seeing it completely fall flat on their face, because it was just hilarious in my honest and humble opinion. But beyond that, it was unenjoyable to watch for the most part, especially hearing from all of the people talking, the how do you call them, the judges, like Simon Cowell giving various, insulting metaphors, or, Paula Abdul just going like this the whole time, and saying, yeah, you were great. It's just, there's just no underlying credibility to the judges, I think, whatsoever either. So that really is another thing that really dampened my enjoyment. But the reason why it pertains so much to this movie is that the two main stars of this film in particular are American Idol contestants, in particular American Idol finalists, and one being the winner. In this case, it was Kelly Clarkson who won, in case nobody is familiar of her name, although I think she is probably one uh, out of the very few American Idol contestants that has actually kind of really made it to stardom. I mean, people I think are more familiar with her name than a lot of other of the finalists. Her and Carrie Underwood are probably the only two that actually maintain some level of success throughout their careers. Um, and all the other ones just kind of faded in the background, including the guy that was the number 2 here, which is Justin, hence the title From Justin to Kelly. And the interesting thing too about the film is that that's really the only thing that is related to American Idol, is just these two up and coming supposed stars. Nothing else in this film besides singing and maybe dancing, but American Idol was more of a singing competition, not a dance competition. So largely it was designed to be largely it was just designed to kind of be, I almost want to say, kind of not only a cash grab for the popularity of American Idol and these particular stars when initially American Idol was popular, but also it was a means of kind of, I guess you could say, kind of launching their supposed careers, and not really a genuine attempt at making something that would be at least memorable or have any effort really put into it. So I think that's largely in part to why it's probably well recognized as being a bad film, is the fact that these stars do link to American Idol, and the fact that it does try to incorporate singing into it. And since it came out around the time when American Idol was fairly popular, it only makes sense that, this would kind of be in the sort of history of bad filmmaking. So basically what I would have done in this scenario is definitely changed the whole setup really to the plot, because basically the reason why I say this has nothing to do with American Idol is because it largely takes place during spring break, and this is designed to be sort of a spring break romance kind of film, and sort of a film with two starring roles and then a bunch of little subplots of the other characters that are going on spring break, which is largely a setup I think a lot of people seen with a lot of these similar kinds of scenarios. The problem with the whole way in which this film is orchestrated is that it doesn't know its identity. It tries to be raunchy but fails, because largely Spring Break is known for very inappropriate behavior and just things that that really are just, they're almost too stupid to talk about. And then it's also noted for being a very, I think it's largely Spring Break, I think, is designed to be very consumer oriented, because a lot of it is about going out and drinking excessively and partying it up, and it's not really a I mean, you can't even call Spring Break a holiday so much as it's just an excuse to go out and do stupid stuff. And this film takes the very kind of, at points it tries to be raunchy, but it really can't, because it is so forced in with this American Idol kind of squeaky clean, feel that you can't really get into the whole idea even behind the spring break, which largely is to be very provocative. Although I think you could make a more squeaky clean, you know, uh, more child-friendly version of Spring Break, but I mean, the way in which they try to somehow combine the two just really doesn't jive right. I mean, they kind of make things very, they try to make it very very kind of conservative, but then at the same time, they try to put in a raunchy situation or something, and it doesn't really seem to pan out right because the tone of this film is completely opposite of it. So it's really all over the place, and that's definitely something that needed to be distinguished. It needed to decide whether or not it wanted to be a kind of more raunchier R-rated film, or if it wanted to be a more child-friendly, more kid-friendly, if it wanted to be a little bit more PG-13. If it really did want to water it down like Hunger Games, um, or Twilight, so to speak, and it needed to distinguish what it wanted to be. And unfortunately, it did not do that and didn't do it well. So that's where we have our first big problem. And I definitely would have made a clear distinction of whether or not I wanted it to be a film that was about trying to keep a more conservative tone, or if I wanted to go full blown R. That needed to be that there's no in between. You just can't insert an in between these two kinds of camps. These camps exist for a reason. So that's the one thing I definitely would have changed right off the bat. Also, the setting. Now, again, I think it needed to clearly distinguish whether or not it wanted to have American Idol kind of be a part of this film, because largely it's not. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, the only thing that resembles it is that they're singing and that the two main stars are American Idol contestants. That's it. There's nothing else that tells you anything that this film would be related to American Idol. So this is another thing that they needed to decide on. They needed to decide on if they wanted to make it a spring break film / musical, or if they wanted it to be related to American Idol. And I think if they did want it to go to the American Idol route, then the setting would have to be completely changed. So instead of it being a spring break film, have it be a somewhat, knockoff of American Idol. Have it be a contest. Have it resemble what these various people who are chosen into being the finalists or being in the top, however, show their relationships with one another, and have the two main characters ultimately be the finalists like they are the main characters within this film, but instead kind of just showcase the difficulty of that, and how they that they may want a romantic relationship, but it's complicated with having this contest because it can really make or break a career path. So, and all the difficulties and challenges that come with it, that would have, I think, worked as far as it being kind of resembling to American Idol. And honestly, I think the two main stars, pretty much everybody as well in this film, needed to be recast. I mean, two people that were American Idol contestants doesn't make them actors or people who are capable of doing an acting role. I mean, and you need to have some at least experience and training behind you in order to at least attempt at being an actor / actress. And these two clearly don't. So what that needed to be done is I think, had they made the actual contestants just not the actual main characters, but a cameo, like they go up and sing at one point, they have their own separate songs or they do a duet or something like that. That would have worked, I think, just giving them that cameo, because then it would have pleased the American Idol fans out there. I mean, that could have worked fairly well. I don't understand why they didn't approach it from that angle, but I guess, they really did want these two to be in the spotlight all the time. So obviously that's why they chose them to be the actor/actress duo. But obviously it doesn't work because they don't have any experience. So yeah, the actors definitely needed to be scrapped. Also, the characters and the way they are characterized is completely, it's there's hardly any character there. There's little to no chemistry. There's one point where they're singing a song together and they're not even staring at each other. Like, she's off staring into the distance and he's off staring into the distance, and they are not singing and looking at each other at all. Like, literally nothing. And I'm just sitting there like laughing, like, do they expect us to take this seriously? I mean, how are we supposed to take this seriously? So obviously a lot of the characters needed to be reworked, and I think had they gone for a similar kind of Grease setup, but at the same time not make it as, phoned in or cheesy, we could have had something, I think, a whole lot better. And obviously that needed to have, there needed to be different actors to fill those roles, and there needed to be given more depth to them. And at the same time, you could have had some plots as well that would have bounced each other off to bring out some more characters and bring out some different relationship dynamics. That could have worked really well too, but they didn't really do that all too well. And that's a huge problem. So I think, ultimately, they're, as you can probably tell from what I've been saying, they did have a lot of options to work with. I mean, they could have done this, but they didn't do that. They could have done this, but then they chose not to do that. This film almost went for the worst scenario possible. It's like, no, let's not go for the best scenario possible. Let's go for the worst scenario possible. And they executed that pretty much to a T throughout. And I think it just goes to show, sometimes, these things kind of stare, I think, people right in the face. And unfortunately, this film really does suffer a lot from that. And I think it does suffer from it being rather fake and not as real or genuine. And I think that's the thing too that I enjoyed so much too about the people who weren't good and didn't have the talent to be on really American Idol, but were given some airtime. Is the fact that it does come off as genuine, because that's how the actual person sounds, and that's how the average person sings. I mean, not everybody is meant to do this kind of work, and I think a lot of what is made within this film reflects onto the kind of manufactured things that we've seen throughout American Idol. And so that's, I think, too, the only other resemblance that I could think of. And unfortunately, that does not pan out well at all. So yeah, it was a bad attempt. And I think, though, with all the suggestions that I made, I think it could have been at least something that was a little bit more memorable and decent, and one that people maybe could come back to later on. But unfortunately, it just doesn't. And it just chose the worst scenarios possible. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say when it comes to this particular film. However, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.